So this is probably, in my opinion, this is the perfect talk for the end of the first day. So who here was on BBSs like back in the day? Okay, so all of you, I'm sure, have wondered at some point in your lives if like, what if we knew then what we know now? I think all of us have wondered that. So I'm happy to introduce Derek Soeder and Paul Mehta from Cylance. So cool talk.
Thanks. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well,
So yeah, I'm Derek.
and I'm Paul, and I'm glad you guys are all here. BBS Era is something most of us remember and have nostalgic memories about. And I thought we might talk a little bit about the inspiration for the talk to begin with.
Yeah, it started as an April Fool's joke, but like a lot of things that start as jokes, it ended up getting serious. And we decided, around about the time that the REcon CFP opened, hey, wouldn't that make a fun talk? Something a little exotic. And yeah, we did end up actually preparing an April Fool's Day press release that just kind of announced one of the vulnerabilities, like as though it were Heartbleed or Ghost or something. We didn't end up making a logo for it because so just GIFs back then, and GIFs were still patented back then, I think. So, anyways, that was basically the inspiration, and looks like they accepted the talk, and so now y'all get to hear all about it.
All right, so the modem era, before the internet, and everything was one-to-one connection. So you had one modem, you could only talk to one other computer, and
yeah, for the few of you who are familiar with BBSs, welcome back. It's good to see you. For everybody else, we're going to talk just a little bit about what is a BBS.
so BBS is one of the things on this screen. We're going to be hacking one of them.
Yeah, point to whichever one you think it is. Go on, don't be shy. Okay, well, all right. I think I see just a few of y'all are participating, and if you're pointing at the kitty, you win. Congratulations.
So the server-side software that we were looking at is called Wildcat. And Derek, I know you're going to tell me something about Wildcat.
Yeah, the funny thing about Wildcat is wild. There you go. There's your anachronism.
Yeah.
Check that box. Yeah, go take it away.
So we're looking at essentially the architecture of how they talk to each other, and it's over a phone line. So everyone from the 90s has heard that sound when you pick up a phone and someone's using the internet.
Yeah, call waiting is a bane of my existence.
And so there is another side to it. There's also the client side, and the client side ends up rendering whatever the BBS sends back. And that leads you to Legend of the Red Dragon.
Anybody? Awesome. Good times. That was my formative years. So yeah, you've got exactly one computer, yours, connected to exactly one computer, the sysops. Hopefully the sysop isn't sitting there staring at everything you're doing all the time, but they totally could if they wanted to. And yeah, contrast that with today where everything is connected to everything all the time. And we've come a long way.
They're probably still watching, but...
And now it's not just one sysop at a time.
So looking at this, we wanted to kind of ask the question because, well, it's relevant. Are BBSs still relevant today? For scale, in the last 30 days or so, there have been 10 new BBSs that have gone up.
Well, welcome to the internet. Nate, wrong term.
And I think in comparison, there have been roughly 16 million new websites per month or so. So the scale here, you got to take into account. But there are still new BBSs going up, and people still use them. And I looked it up. Actually, as of 2015, there's still 2.1 million people in America on dial-up.
I got nothing to say about that.
I doubt they're on BBSs, but I thought it was kind of interesting.
So now that you all know about everything about BBSs, now here are the programs that we're going to attack. Wildcat being the BBS software, the server, and then RipTerm being the clients, the terminal program. RipTerm typically calls Wildcat, and with a sound that goes something like, "It's working." Does that warm you right here? Yeah, good. We clipped it for for conciseness. It actually ran on for like a minute or so.
So we thought we'd look at back then and today.
Who knows where this guy's from? The blue guy? Yeah, thank you. And the comparatively orange guy? Yeah, there we go. The past and the present united in one slide.
So when it comes to software, what did we use back then? What do we use today? So back then, people would boot from a disk. And today, we really have to use DOSBox, or if you're running on like 2003, you can use NTVDM, which, well, to debug back then.
Yeah, remember DOS debug? It doesn't even have breakpoints. Oh, did I just step on something? It's not supposed to look that way. Okay, well,
Now today,
the specific content's unimportant.
Today we use WinDebug mostly, or GDB if you're on Unix, and DOS debug, which we actually found to be quite useless.
Yeah, that's a DOSBox debugging interface. It's a bit of a pain. You can rebuild it with debugging support. Yeah, we just weren't able to bring very much good out of it.
And looking at disassembly, I think you may have had to use debug back then.
The premier reverse engineering tool of the 80s and 90s.
Nowadays, we have things like IDA and a slew of other tools at our disposal, which makes it a lot easier from a reverse engineering point of view. Back then, today we have things like Procmon.
Back in the day, security was war dialing and guessing passwords. Today, it's these invisible $1 million O days. It's like the emperor's new clothing, but in reverse. You can't see them if you're a good person. I'm just kidding. I still like y'all.
So back then you got stoned, apparently, and today it's a lot more annoying.
You have to pay your ransoms in Bitcoin. Dead drops. Gold bullion.
Gold bullion. Okay. And now, looking at the post-modem era. A great leap forward often requires 2 steps back. Not always, though.
These are this is not always a great leap forward, or it's not always 2 steps back, because we're about to take a couple big steps back. Starting off talking about RipTerm. I mean, I'm just going to go through the basic teardown the same way we look at apps nowadays for like security assessment. What is the attack surface? It's a client, but it's got all these protocols that it supports. There's the protocol that it speaks with the modem, which we don't expect to have too much influence over. So this is a command to dial a number, and then the modem might say back no carrier or connected or whatever. There's a telnet protocol. ANSI codes, really great. Before there was a RIP script, which I'm about to get to, there was ANSI for all your color and cursor needs. There are various file transfer protocols, X, Y, Z, modem, I don't know. Didn't look into that because really, once we looked at RIP script, there was no need to go anywhere else. This is super rich. So these got telegraphics. They were working on, and if there's anybody from telegraphics here or who worked there once upon a time, hi, love your software. Don't take any of this the wrong way. It's just a convenient old program for talk about modern day attacking. And it supported this really rich protocol called RIP for drawing vector graphics, essentially. Like, whereas with ANSI, you can make ASCII art, and pretty colorful ASCII art, but just ASCII art. With the RIP script, you could do all kinds of things, even accessing files on the on the client's computer. It's really, really crazy. So it's not script in the JavaScript sense, where you can actually like massage the heap or something. Too bad, but you can do a lot. So we're going to look at that for vulnerabilities. I wonder if we'll find anything.
So we'd actually found something before we actually got to the reverse engineering part, but when you actually open up RipTerm in IDA, it doesn't really know what you're looking at, and it's not something you can massage into something nice. You have to actually take one step further before you can begin reversing it in IDA. And so we found two different ways to do this that I'm sure there's a whole bunch more, but we thought that, so Derek here actually took the LE and reconstituted it into a PE.
Almost. Okay, so for a little bit of background, the whole thing looks like a 16-bit DOS EXE, but the 16-bit code sets up like this DOS protected mode environment. It's like the Watcom DOS extender, if you've heard of that. And then inside of the EXE, it's got embedded this linear executable, which is actually, I think, the same format, almost the same format as Windows VXDs use. It'll load that into memory, but there are just enough differences to make it annoying to where you can't just cut it out of the file and then load it straight in IDA. I got about as far as applying the relocations to it, but then I just ran out of time because Paul came up with a better way.
So it was kind of funny. Derek was working on it, and you spent a couple hours, and I was like, why don't you just do this? So I pulled it up. I ran it in NTVDM, and I was like, give me a byte sequence, Derek. So he was nice enough to spit one over and did a search, dumped the region of memory to disk, opened that up in IDA, and there you go. It understands it, and it's nice, it's easy. It's an oldie, but, I mean, we still use it all the time. So that worked nicely. And this here is the process basically dumping it and going from a crash to an analysis. And what we found was, well, you guessed it.
It's a little hard to read, but yeah,
It's a string copy. Now, this is how Derek actually ended up with the crash.
So what's your go-to technique nowadays? When in doubt, you just fuzz it and see what happens. And so we did. I wrote just a real dumb fuzzer. The annoying thing are those message boxes you see popping up. There are certain commands you can do that will cause a message box, and then everything stops until it's dismissed. So I wrote a little program that would just emulate escape keystrokes to make it go away like every few seconds. Real cheesy, but good enough.
I don't think you could do that back in the day.
Yeah.
So this is just a recording of what it looked like, and it's drawing vector graphics here, and you'll see lines and stuff like that, which we thought this is the perfect place to look. And there's just like, I'm going to go with dozens of commands. Like, they're all that bang pipe and then command sequence and then parameters. And so the fuzzer is really just doing a bunch of that, just generating a bunch of bang pipe garbage. And sometimes you get a circle, sometimes you get a line, and then sometimes you get Rippy. No, that's the fuzzer's name is Rippy. yeah.
Thanks, Rippy. And sometimes you get a crash. Now this is the DOS extender itself intercepting the fault and then just doing core dump thing to the console. What is that up in the corner? Do my eyes deceive me? Oh. Yeah, so it didn't, of course, actually crash at 414 the first time. Sorry, what was that, Steve? No, it's okay. But this is after we massaged the proof of concept a little bit. We got control over most registers, most notably EIP. This is that's a little. I don't know if I quite have time to get into it, but this is a little weird. Like I was expecting RipTerm to be like 16-bit, totally real mode. But no, it's not only is it like protected mode, but it's actually 32-bit flat address space. I guess the DOS 4GW extender, presumably the 4G stands for like 4 gigabytes. So that's why this crash dump looks such a familiar format.
Now, when it comes to exploiting RipTerm, this is like taking a step back in time and realizing, wow, okay, we have the keys to the kingdom here. There's no depth. Pretty much everything is RWX. It's like, okay, sweet. There is no ASLR. That's also nice. No safe SEH.
No SEH.
No stack cookies. Control flow guard. Oh,
They didn't have control flow guard back then?
I don't know what they were thinking. No CET or control flow enhancement technology. That's a new one. And it wasn't a problem.
Can I do that?
Thanks, Steve.
So we kind of went from, we took it to an extreme. We tried to do like ROP, and it totally worked. But then we were like, what's the point? Which, kind of summed it up nicely.
So we could, so we had our choice of tools. We had WinDebug on NTVDM, which is pretty cool because you get to see it executing in, protected mode with arbitrary selectors or in virtual 86 mode or whatever. Pretty convenient. There is, of course, the DOSBox debugger, but that wasn't a pleasant experience.
So it's not actually a debugger, so you can't set real breakpoints. And it's very frustrating to use. And this brings us to the other application that we looked at.
The server side. So pretty much Wildcat is, at least from our client perspective, it's all just text-based GUI, or GUI. So yeah, UI, we'll say. So this is pretty much your attack surface. Whatever you can get it to do, or whatever protocols it's going to speak, which is mostly just like user keystrokes and input, but there's file transfer. We didn't really get into that because, first we should talk about how to reverse Wildcat. This went a lot better than RipTerm, let me tell you. Like IDA works like a charm. It knows, okay, so Wildcat was written in Pascal. It's all like 16-bit, and IDA, bless its heart, it knows all those functions. Like it has flirt signatures, so.
It found their alloc, found their copies, and it's like, oh, that's pretty handy.
Yeah, the decompiler didn't quite work. Didn't expect it to so much, but nobody wants to go back to far pointers. Okay, now let's actually talk about tearing it down. So we walked through a bunch of the functionality, and this is just like a test drive version of Wildcat off of some like public domain or some freeware CD. So I'll just cut to the chase. This is where we ended up looking. Messages. Enter a message. You can enter a message, but.
And no, they have a 151 line limit, which, okay, you can only enter 151 lines, but you can insert wherever you like.
Yeah, so they didn't bother to check which line you put there. And I'll tell you why that's cool. So Pascal has all of these these counted strings. There's no like stir copy buffer overflow that I know of in Pascal. So like the lines in this message were truncated to 80 characters. But then you get to thinking, well, how about heap allocations? There are almost no heap allocations in Wildcat. Its use of the heap is paltry, but it uses it here. And here there's like a 16-bit arithmetic overflow. You put in a line number, it multiplies it by 81 to go find the place in the buffer to put it. And
So we were thinking it'd be funny if part of the exploit includes, okay, go here, enter a message at line 810, enter these contents. Essentially, 810 worked out to the size of a line times the number that you enter, and to wrap it, you only have to wrap a 16-bit variable. So you can end up overflowing the previous string, and you overflow the character that says how many characters are in the string.
The good point of it was, yeah, like pretty much almost arbitrary control over where it writes to within that 64K segment. The bad part is it's within the 64K segment. And there were there's no heap header to overflow. There was a free list, but because it uses the heap so little, it didn't actually matter overriding the free list pointers. So we did not get code execution in Wildcat. This turns out to be a useful tool in crafting like a malicious message, but that's a story for another day. You want a demo?
Yeah. Okay, so we have a bit of a demo here. How do we get out of this? Sure. All right, so the demo's up here, Derek, for you. This is using that 16-bit wrap that we just talked about and entering some malicious payload. Now, this is DOSBox on both sides here, and they're talking to each other.
Okay, cool. Yeah, DOSBox is neat because it emulates modems. I think, sorry. Yeah, do you want to drive?
Sure.
I think we just need to save it and open it.
Yeah, so I think this was best done as a snapshot because you can enter this stuff by text, and nobody wants to wait around for that.
Imagine entering your shell code with like alt number combinations, byte by byte. Yeah, that's for real.
So we're just going to go there and we're going to read that message that we just entered. Presumably you leave it for someone else, but... And what you end up with is a nice crash. And then it disconnects, and you can turn this crash into code execution fairly easily.
So it's like the receiving a phishing email with with an exploit attached to it, but old school.
Just call this number with your modem. Where were we? All right, okay, so we just did that now.
Mother.
All right.
Motherfuckers who thought their ass would age like wine. If you mean it turns to vinegar, it does. If you mean it gets better with age, it don't.
Now, we have one more demo to show you guys, and this is kind of where we left it. I think it shows off this perfectly. Have you guys ever tried to get someone to play a game, and they're like, yeah, I'll do it in a minute. Just leave me alone. And they never get around to it. Well, I think we may have solved that, Derek. Oh, man. Hold on. Okay, so I tried to decrease the resolution just before so you guys could see it better, but we'll go back here. The wonders of DOSBox. Okay. Ooh, sorry about that, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you for telling me. Okay, here we go. So this is just running RipTerm, and it's talking to another application over a modem here. So we're going to see an incoming call.
Who's
Why
there?
don't we answer it? And you launch Doom on the system. Now, you guys remember this? We were thinking about what to do with it, and it brings me back. So,
The 90s live again, if only in our emulators.
all right. So now that's the conclusion. And any questions?
Y'all feel free to ask questions or watch us play Doom.
We're not going to make them watch us play Doom. All right.
Buddy, everybody ready to go to the bar? Yeah. What,
It's not a question, but I just want to kind of mention that for REcon 2013, there was a REcon BBS. Did you guys call it?
So the comment was that in 2013 there was a REcon BBS. I had no idea.
Yeah, because it was a secret. It was like an Easter egg contest, and at the bottom of the papers, there was an old school Ask BBS ad with a phone number on it. Actually, if you're set up running.
Oh, I wish we'd known about that. We tried to stay away from hacking real computers.
Opportunity missed. Well,
Send me the number.
y'all heard it here first. What else?
Sure, why not?
Sounds reasonable. I wonder if those would be expensive or cheap.
Yeah.
What is the demand for
We'll
those?
set the price at $1 million. Sounds reasonable.
$999.95.
Or they could just go and, fuzz it themselves.
Now they know how because, yeah, it's like software antiques. Anything else? Anything else? Y'all have been too kind. Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you.